The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
The Nonprofit Voice is a premier radio program featuring nonprofits on Long Island every Saturday morning. We have learned about, been inspired by, and celebrated hundreds of nonprofits in our community. The Nonprofit Voice is produced by Marketing Works, the only full-service marketing and public relations firm that works almost exclusively with nonprofit agencies. We pride ourselves on our reputation in creating strategic marketing and public relations campaigns, successful virtual, hybrid, and live events, as well as powerful social media and digital campaigns. As the leaders in nonprofit marketing, no other agency understands the industry as we do, and we are committed to the success of each and every one of our clients. Marketing Works hopes you enjoy this week's featured nonprofit. Good morning, this is Ron Gold from Marketing Works. The name of the show is The Nonprofit Voice, and this is show number 502. 2 weeks ago, I had an event here with my 500th radio show, and I brought on some of my guests who had been on during the 10 years because I started in 2013. So you're number 502, Debbie. Is that okay?
That is perfect. I like that number.
You do. Get closer to the microphone. I want to welcome RSDSA. This is my special guest for today. And Jim Broach, you are the Executive Vice President, Director of the National Organization. I have Debbie O'Connor, who is the chair of the 5th Annual Walk, which will... ONeill, I'm sorry. Oh, my God. Because my neighbor's name is O'Connor. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Debbie ONeill. Cut. Start again. No, I'm kidding. Debbie ONeill is the chair of the 5th Annual Walk and Expo, which will be at Eisenhower Park on September 9th. And why don't you tell me about that, Debbie?
We started the walk in 2016 to raise awareness for CRPS, Complex Regional Pain Syndrome. It is rated as the most chronic pain in the world and the most painful, and yet no doctors really know what it is, how to treat it. A lot of times they think we're faking.
But we have a doctor here today who doesn't think you are faking, right?
No, he doesn't.
Right? Dr. Durkin.
He actually changed everything around for me when I went to him. Before Dr. Durkin, I was in bed for 13 years. So,
wow.
God bless.
Yeah. So anyway, what we do for the walk is just a tiny part of it. One of the things that we wanted to do that was different was to bring our community together, because CRPS is very, very isolating. So we made it a breakfast, we do a barbecue at 12, and we have an expo area, which is where we educate people that have CRPS, because they're not aware of all the treatments that are available to them. And I think that's really important. We have doctors, we have physical therapists, we have nurses, we have compounding companies that make special medications like ketamine for them. And we talk about it, so they can ask our sponsors questions about it, things like that.
Well, let's go into the history. I want to talk to Jim a little bit first. He told me that it was started by two women in 1984, which means that next year is going to be your 40th anniversary. And he told me that out of all the people that went for his job, he's the only one who got it.
or wanted it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background, Jim, and also about what RSDSA is.
My background is a master's in social work. I've always worked for not-for-profits. And before I was working for RSDSA, I was on the national board for National Organization of Rare Disorders. And our organization was started in 1984 by two women. And they did a great job. They started funding for research. They started finding doctors and therapists who were willing to learn and treat people with CRPS. they were beginning to retire so the board of directors did a search, and they contacted the National Organization of Rare Disorders. Abby Myers, the CEO, recommended that I interview, and I was lucky enough to get the job, and I've served as their executive director, executive vice president for 22 years.
Well, let's go back to a little bit more of what RSDSA is.
So we're a national not-for-profit. Our mission statement is to educate, to support, and most of all, provide hope for people with complex regional pain syndrome, and also, most importantly, fund and advocate for research for, one, better treatments, and second, a cure, if that's ever possible. Most medical maladies do not have a cure, but we need more specialized treatments that will really help people with this syndrome.
Well, we have Dr. Durkin here, and you're with, what's the name of your organization?
New York Spine and Pain Specialist.
Now, how would you define what RSD is?
So CRPS, RSD, we don't know what to call it sometimes. The old term is RSD. The newer term, which is not even really that new anymore, it's been around for 30 plus years, is it used to be reflex sympathetic dystrophy or causalgia. It's been renamed complex regional pain syndrome, type 1 or type 2. And it's a chronic pain disease, and it can be debilitating and severe, and some of the worst pain that patients will ever experience in their lives. It's been a medical problem for centuries, first described in Civil War times, back when, for the first time, patients survived being shot, for example, and they might have had their arm shot off and damaged all the nerves that go down their arm. And they came back from the war with these really severe pains that kept them from ever getting back to living a normal life before. So we've known about this in the medical community for many, many years, but we don't know why it happens. We do know that there are some treatments that can help. Probably the most effective treatment is really getting yourself back to using your limb. It typically affects the limbs after an injury. And the injury can be as severe as a gunshot wound or a break, or as small as a needle stick from like an IV. I've seen patients that have developed CRPS after having an IV put in.
Do you see this a lot, or is it very rare?
No, it's not. It's not that rare.
It's not that rare.
Yeah, but that's the problem with rare diseases, as you know, Jim. There's many, many rare diseases, but there's still, when you combine all those people in the world together, that's a big number.
There's over 7,000 rare diseases, and some just affecting a family.
So 7,000 rare diseases, but how many have this disease?
Well, the FDA says that it's a rare disease, which means that the incidence is less than 200,000. But we have a great doc from Vanderbilt who looked at the epidemiological studies, and he believes in America alone there's 50,000 new cases a year. The problem is most physicians and therapists are not familiar with it. So we spend a lot of time trying to get people with this syndrome, family members, to get to the right people like Dr. Durkin. Too often it's not a medical specialist who you go see like anesthesiologist or neurologist, but a doctor who's familiar with it and wants to treat you. Takes a village.
Yeah. Is there a certain part of the country that has it more than others?
To my knowledge, no, not at all. But people with this syndrome may go to a warmer climate because the cold hurts, the thunderstorms hurt, weather changes hurt, and less humid places like Arizona. A lot of people are going to Arizona with this syndrome.
I lived there.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
So Debbie, tell me about your situation, how I got it. How you got it. Yeah, because I read about that.
I was working for Home Depot. I was the office manager, and I went out on the floor to see what supplies we needed for the store. Someone had put a 10-foot tall case of steel flashing that weighed 50 pounds against the wall, and it fell on me. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It fell on my neck and shoulder.
50 pounds?
50 pounds.
And you're still here?
And I'm still here. But what was weird about it, and why I wrote an incident report, was that my hand swelled up. And I thought that was bizarre. You know, I was like, why would my hand swell when I got hit here? And thank God I did that, because I wound up having to go out 6 months later because of it. And it took a while to get it diagnosed. I'm one of the lucky ones who had a doctor who truly believed that something was wrong. And he did a lot of research after doing all types of tests, because diagnosing it is more an elimination of everything else. So I was diagnosed within a year of the injury that I had.
So the healing, it was cured, and then you felt it afterwards?
It never healed.
Never healed?
No, the pain subsided a little bit, like within the first 2 weeks, and then it came back. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the day I stopped working, I was sitting in my office, and my muscles in my arms started popping, and it looked like popcorn, like someone was popping corn on my arm. And it was extremely painful, and I went to the ER, and that was it. That was the last day I was able to work.
Are there a lot of doctors that would be able to diagnose you?
I went to a pain management doctor who tried to give me epidurals, and he gave me a block, but it didn't work back then.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons was because my pain was not under control on any level. And I was on Percocet, then I was on oxycodone. I was sent to a neurologist, and he knew what CRPS was, and he took me on, and he treated me until he retired. And then I found Dr. Durkin, and that was at a time when a lot of doctors, pain management doctors, were not taking on new patients because of the opiate crisis.
Right.
And his office took me.
His office.
His office took me. And
How
he was
lucky,
recommended. Yeah, from, I forget the name of the hospital in New York City, the special hospital.
Special surgery.
So.
They're opening up in East Meadow, I think, also, right?
Yeah, but I'm staying with Dr. Durkin.
Yeah, I would stay
I'm not
with him
going
too,
nowhere. Yeah, because it was life-changing. The medication he put me on, I take an extended release every morning, and then I take an immediate release if I need it. And if it's really, really bad, I call the office, and they call in a prescription for something a lot stronger.
Really?
And that's rare. I think I've had a call for something extra, maybe 2 or 3 times a year.
Now, the weather this weekend is going to be
it's already
horrible.
killing me.
It's already killing. So
Yeah.
it does have
So
that effect.
I feel it right now from here to here.
Debbie, were you ever able to find a physical therapist who could help you restore functioning?
So with me, what happened, they sent me to physical therapy twice. Mm-hmm. And at first I did really, really good. I could tolerate it. But by the 4th time that I went, I was hysterical crying from the pain. I couldn't do anything. And we tried it 2 times, and then we stopped it. But I had to go to physical therapy for a concussion that I had, and I was able to do that for a year. And Dr. Durkin did a block on me about 2 months ago. And that block, which had put me into a fetal position of pain when I had it 13 years ago, worked really well. And I think that's because my pain is more controlled now.
How many misdiagnoses did you go through?
I didn't because
you didn't?
I didn't
all
because
the years? That's great.
Yeah, because my primary care believed me. He also is a teacher at Stony Brook University.
Yeah.
And he likes to do research. And he stayed with me throughout the whole process until he retired. So I am lucky that I had someone that believed me, because a lot of people don't.
Jim, we're talking about the 2 names, CRPS and RSDS. What are you doing with all those? Is that confusing to you? It's confusing to everybody else.
We are not in charge of naming our syndrome, and it has had probably 20 different names over the years. I actually like complex regional pain syndrome because it's the only medical malady with the word complex as the first word. And that is what this disease is, and it's not mediated all the time by the sympathetic nervous system. So it becomes a regional syndrome. So I like complex regional pain syndrome, and we're in the process of looking at changing our name of organization, because when people call us up, if they say they have RSD, I say, I know you've had it for a long time, and they say complex regional pain syndrome. They might have been newly diagnosed. But it is a problem.
Well, from my end, where I specialize in marketing, it is confusing, and it's not it doesn't help you until you settle on something that you're just going to be using and punching that out. I mean, this poor doctor over here, what is he going to call it? Well, tell me about the research. How is the research going?
Well, right now, what's been happening in clinical trials for complex regional pain syndrome is not one trial has been affirmative for really treating complex regional pain syndrome. So what we've really been looking at is what are the mechanisms underlying this syndrome. And we look at, there's probably different subsets, as people having a constellation of different symptoms. And so what we're trying to do right now is raise some money for a clinical trial to look at the subset of warm CRPS versus cold CRPS. And we believe that with a warm CRPS, with a steroid, that you could treat it well. So we're trying to show the world through this one subset clinical trial that this is the way to approach, is look at the symptoms and then tailor your therapeutic to do that, target those symptoms.
Well, Dr. Durkin, does this help if they come up with one name for it versus the way it is, or it doesn't matter to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you see it, you know it. So there are a constellation of symptoms that often present. Especially early on, you'll have swelling and hair loss, and the skin will look shiny, and it'd be extremely painful to touch. Just a simple touch of an area that has CRPS in it, so to speak, can put somebody through the roof. As time goes on, it becomes less obvious, but patients like Deborah has had it for so long now that she doesn't have those changes like you do perhaps from early on in the process. So it's a whole constellation of symptoms over time that changes. So it's very difficult to put a name on it. So complex regional pain syndrome is a good catch-all for these really complex cases.
So let's do it. What are we waiting for? Let's just, forget the art. I know what you're saying. No. Because you have to gradually do it. You can't just say, okay, this is who we are now, and don't mention the other one. Because, I did it with Epilepsy Foundation of Long Island. I did their rebrand to just EPIC, because they didn't want to be known as Epilepsy Foundation because it was too long. So they wanted to go with the acronyms like everyone else. And they started calling themselves EPIC. And pretty soon, maybe within a year, you started seeing it take effect. It doesn't happen right away. And they still have the logo for epilepsy on their website and everything else that they do. But, if you call them, they're EPIC, and that's probably what you should be doing soon.
Ron, what's very interesting is that what do you think is the percentage of healthcare dollars invested in pain research? What percentage?
I have no idea.
Less than 2%.
Really?
It's the number one reason you go to the doctor, and only 2% of our healthcare dollars. There is not one institute for pain at the National Institute of Health. It's all just diffused through the various institutes. And that's part of the problem, not just for CRPS, but for fibromyalgia, for all these chronic pain syndromes. There's not enough attention.
Dr. Durkin, you're saying that you could see right away this disease as soon as they come in? How come other
sometimes
doctors can't?
Well, we don't learn about this that much in medical school. There's like 7,000 rare diseases. Yeah. There's probably 1,200 days of medical school that you go through, right? 300 days a year for 4 years. Yeah. There's not time to teach every single disease that can possibly be affecting us humans. So these things are scaled over quickly. And then in training programs, so what we see all the time is somebody breaks a wrist and the orthopedic surgeon takes care of it, and then they develop CRPS. And the orthopedic surgeon, many orthopedic surgeons nowadays are more versed in it, but they might not believe that the patient's having more pain out of proportion to their injury, and there may be a cast on, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and then finally it appears, and these patients can be stuck with chronic pain for the rest of their lives if it's not treated effectively early on in the whole scenario.
Well, Dr. Durkin, Jim Broach, Debbie ONeill, how's that? We got you. We are ending our first segment, so we will be taking a break. This is Ron Gold from Marketing Works. The name of the show is A Nonprofit Voice, and we will be right back. The Nonprofit Voice is a premier radio program featuring nonprofits on Long Island every Saturday morning. We have learned about, been inspired by, and celebrated hundreds of nonprofits in our community. The Nonprofit Voice is produced by Marketing Works, the only full-service marketing and public relations firm that works almost exclusively with nonprofit agencies. We pride ourselves on our reputation in creating strategic marketing and public relations campaigns, successful virtual, hybrid, and live events, as well as powerful social media and digital campaigns. As the leaders in nonprofit marketing, no other agency understands the industry as we do, and we are committed to the success of each and every one of our clients. Marketing Works hopes you enjoy this week's featured nonprofit. Good morning. This is Ron Gold from Marketing Works. The name of the show is The Nonprofit Voice, and this is show number 502. 500 was 2 weeks ago, and we had a nice event here for all my guests that had been on. Not all the guests that were here, but I had a good amount. 20 people from the past came back and were on the air with me. It was great. And Debbie ONeill was there, right, Debbie?
Yes, I was.
You have a good time?
Yes, it was very nice.
It was some event. Anyway, Jim Broach is the Executive Vice President and Director of National RSDSA, soon to be CRPS, right? At some point, as we celebrate their 40th anniversary next year.
Right now, we have a tagline of serving the CRPS community, but it's not enough.
No, it's not enough. And then we have Dr. Durkin, who is here from New York Health and Pain, right?
New York Spine and Pain Specialist.
New York Spine and Pain Specialist. Congratulations. There you are. Tell me about the best treatments, as you said, for treating the RSD.
So really in the beginning, when the injury occurs, the best thing to do is physical therapy. And if physical therapy doesn't work, then some more physical therapy. And then maybe even some more physical therapy on top of that.
Wow.
That's what I tell people that come in and see us for the first time with newly diagnosed CRPS.
Sometimes you need a little psychological therapy to help get over the hump of being able to do physical therapy. So there are psychologists, social workers out there across Long Island that are may refer patients to help work on stuff like cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of mind over matter, to get themselves able to start using whatever part of their body has been affected by the CRPS. And if these things don't happen, sometimes we prescribe medications like anti-inflammatories, steroids, sometimes nerve pain medications, and sometimes even opioids if need be. And then if those don't work, then we go into more invasive things with needles, where we might block nerves, for example, with a needle, and turn off pain signals chemically with an injection. So these are the kinds of things that we do here at in my practice and other practices around Long Island. And but the most important thing is recognizing the issue and coming up with an individualized treatment plan for the patient.
I was so against physical therapy until I started going. And I had the right person and the right people helping me. I'm using Advanced Sports. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, they're good.
They're absolutely wonderful. The atmosphere in there. I mean, I thought it was going to be, oh my God, everybody there is, they're either getting off, they got a new knee or they have something else. And here I come. And the only thing I have is a back that makes me hunched over. And I loved it.
I got to give you my card.
What?
I got to give you my card.
You got it. Yeah.
I recommend him.
I'm going to take it. But wow, the atmosphere was great. I couldn't believe it. I've been going 2 or 3 times a week for the last 6 months, and I couldn't feel better about it. It was wonderful.
Oh, good.
So now I'll go to you, and I'll feel even better. So, Debbie, I want to ask you about the documentary that's on Netflix right now, because you told me that you watched it this morning and you cried. What is it?
So, in general, it's about this young girl, when she was 10 years old, developed CRPS. And they brought her to different doctors, different treatments. She was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome. And they started her on low-dose ketamine infusions, but it wasn't working. Nothing they were doing for her would work at all. Her doctor had heard of the ketamine coma, which is a treatment that some people have gone through. And the short of that is they put you in a ketamine coma for 5 days, and the theory is that you're going to reboot your brain so that the pain signals that it's constantly repeating stops.
So it's actually,
and she had to go to Mexico.
That you don't get out of? I mean,
No,
you're like
it's
out of it?
It's a coma.
You're incubated. You're
Right.
It's like being under general anesthesia with ketamine as being the medication that we offer ketamine infusions in our practice. We do them at St. Charles Hospital, and patients will go there for a 4-hour morning time and get infused. And these are patients that have oftentimes had CRPS for a long time, and we see some good results at times.
Well, it makes me feel better hearing anesthesia than coma. I don't know. I think a coma, I'm like.
But it's not legal in the United States, and I don't think that has changed. So her family took her to Mexico to have it done.
Oh, boy.
But when she came out of it, she was able to move her arms. She was in less pain, a lot. The pain was pretty much non-existent when she came out of it, although she never regained use of her legs. So they started her on low-dose ketamine treatments, and I forget what they're called, when the compounding makes like these little...
Troche.
Yeah, of ketamine. And that's what she was doing.
He's here.
Me too. Anyway, she was doing really, really well on that until a hurricane hit. They lived in Florida. And after that hurricane, her symptoms just came back with a vengeance. And nothing was working. So the hospital that they took her to thought that her mother had Munchausen's because she kept telling them that she needed ketamine, that she needed a ketamine infusion. This is the treatment that she's been on. And they thought that the mother had Munchausen, that the daughter was faking.
Wow.
And they called Child Protective Services on her. And there's a long story of it, but the long and short is she wasn't allowed to see her daughter, neither was the father. And they were in court one day, and she wasn't allowed to even give her daughter a hug. And she couldn't handle it, and the mother wound up committing suicide.
Oh, my God.
But it's a longer story than how I'm...
Now, is this a series or a documentary?
It's a documentary. It's in 1 hour and 42 minutes. But also in the documentary, there's other patients whose parents have kids with CRPS. And they've had the same thing. Some of them actually have done jail time because of it, because these doctors do not understand or do not do research into CRPS and what it is.
Well,
when I go to the hospital or have any kind of procedure done, if I have to go to a new doctor, whether it's for my heart or whatever, because, I'm getting older, I bring a folder with me and I give them all this literature on CRPS. And I tell them they have to read it. I don't suggest they read it. I said, if you're going to treat me, you have to understand my underlying condition and how you work with me and touch me.
Wow.
I had surgery on my kidney and I was in the hospital 9 days. Normally people were in for 2 nights. I was there for 9 days just to keep the pain under control from it.
Dr. Durkin, are there different ages that get this, or it could be anybody?
It could be anybody. Women are a little more commonly to get it than men. I've seen kids as young as 7 or 8 years old get it. The good thing about when kids get it, typically it gets better as they get older, as long as it's recognized. But I have seen kids that were locked up in their room for several years before they even got a diagnosis. So early intervention is extremely important. And the 10-year-old that had it, that's a heartbreaking story. When we see these patients, if we can't get them back and functional, we usually send them to a specific children's pain program throughout the Northeast. There's several of them around the Northeast that specialize and do really well with kids with CRPS.
But the kids aren't diagnosed right away like the older people are.
Well, we don't
with pediatricians that might not see that as much.
Humans are skeptics, and especially when there was a kid, the kid is complaining about their toe hurting and they, you think the parents think, they just don't want to go to school or they don't want to go outside and play with their friends. And, these are rare diseases, but they do happen, they do happen. And, the physician community needs to be aware of this. And I think we've gotten better over the course of my career. I've seen improvements in our area on Long Island with awareness, maybe through the RSD walk, and just, more specialists in pain and more focus on chronic pain syndromes in our area, which is good.
I had a mother that used to complain every single day about something. Her toe hurt, her finger hurt, her neck hurt, so that when something really did hurt her and it was bad, you never knew it because everybody ignored her because it was like every day there was something else. We all have minor aches and pains every day, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah. But we're really talking about today the most painful ailment that people could develop 24/7. We're talking about that it is unbelievable. And but I just want to say there's hope out there. What happens a lot of times is people will not accept that it can be such a life-altering diagnosis and condition. And sometimes it takes people a couple years to reach out for help. And meanwhile, the syndrome is progressing and it's spreading to different limbs. So it becomes centralized.
You know what I want to hear from you, Jim? I want to hear of this virtual walk that you just did. Because that sounds amazing. Yeah. I mean, because I asked you a question because on Long Island, we're doing a walk on September 9th. And I said to you, do they do this all over the country? Because you're the director for the whole country. And you answered me by saying, we just did a walk. We did a virtual walk for the whole country. Tell me about that.
Thanks for asking. 3 years ago when the pandemic just erupted, Debbie we were going to do the Long Island walk and we just could not do it. And Debbie had an idea, why don't we just encourage people to walk in their community? So for the last 3 to 4 years, we've been doing it. And this year we had one of our board of directors, Kelly Constantine, who is very impaired, and she trained her own service dog, and she really energized the community. And we had people in more than 30 states walking, and we raised over $50,000, and it was fabulous.
And you're going to use that money for research, right?
Not necessarily for research at this point. We're using it for education and support.
Now, so how did this work with virtual? I mean, it's just, to me, I've seen virtual events And they haven't been the same, obviously, as, doing the actual walk because of the camaraderie between the walk, when you're going out. And then after the walk, you have the barbecue and the educational seminars and things so you could really learn about it. How did that work out?
What was really neat about it, Ron, is that after we walked in Connecticut, we linked the other walks together via a live stream.
Okay.
And we had people from California, sunny California. It was cold as hell in Connecticut. Yeah. And we had people in Michigan, all over. And they just spoke and talked about the importance of getting their neighbors involved, because people are not familiar with complex regional pain syndrome until someone in your family develops it or you develop it. It is really unknown syndrome. And so one of the good points about Maya's story in People magazine in the documentary is we hope that people will learn about our syndrome, and because we're one of 7,000 rare syndromes, and that people will get diagnosed more often, earlier.
So as the national director or national executive vice president director, what is some of your main functions? I mean, since you work with 4 or 5 people.
I do.
It must be lonely, doesn't it? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, basically what I like to do is talk to people who are newly diagnosed, because they're confused and they might only be seeing one doctor, and it really takes a whole interdisciplinary team. So I really talk to people that they have to become their own CEO. They have to really find that physical therapist, because most physical therapists are not familiar with, and it's not no pain, no gain, because so often people go to physical therapy and they hurt themselves. So we do a lot of education. We have almost 125 videos on YouTube that talk about the diagnosis and the management, and really hopeful about that. And we start support groups. We fund research. We've funded over $2 million of research over the 22 years I've been there. And we really try to help people find the right people to build those teams together.
Well, you said 20 years ago you and Jim got together for the walk on Long Island.
Yes.
And you put it together then?
The walk?
First one you had?
No, the first walk we had was in 2016.
Okay.
I think I met Jim in
2013.
No, I'm kidding. No, but 20 years ago, Jim was RSDSA was the only resource out there. And I called them and he answered the phone. Jim always answers the phone. He always takes calls. He still talks to people one-on-one. Just coming over here on the drive, he had, 3 calls? Yeah, 3 calls that he took. So Jim is really, really good. And he helped me because I knew nothing about it at all.
But talk about the walk.
So in the past 4 walks that we did, we've raised $265,000.
Wow.
And with that money, like I told you before, RSDSA gets about 90% of all of that, minus the cost that we do have to pay out. We try to get everything donated, the breakfast, the burgers, the hot dogs. We have the local fire department come in, because when you have a big crowd, they have to man the barbecue. But what we have is an expo center. So all of our sponsors, like Dr. Durkin, get a table, and they each, talk to anyone who comes up. They tell them things about things that are available, different treatments. We have marijuana dispensaries sponsor us, physical therapy places sponsor us, Swanger Passeri. We have a lot of good sponsors. This year we have Paramount Plus sponsoring us.
Really? That's
yes.
Great.
We don't have the passwords yet, though.
Oh, yeah. Let's get into the passwords.
But, I lost my thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, but you were talking about the different sponsors that you have. And you
Right.
said Paramount Plus. You talked about Columbia Care. You didn't say Columbia Care.
Right.
You just said these marijuana
Ontario,
people.
Columbia Care Dispensary. Dr. Durkin has been with us since the beginning, and I always have him as our lead speaker for the walk after Jim.
Well, he should be the Grand Marshal
Right.
this year. Yeah.
But we also give our sponsors an opportunity to talk to everybody that's there. They get up there and talk for 15 minutes and tell everyone about their services. Because like I said, it's very isolating. And another thing that I always advocate for is a therapist. Because when you get this condition, you lose a big part of your physical self.
Right.
And you have to grieve for that. I used to swim like 40 laps a day in my pool. I used to go bike riding all the time, rollerblading, and all of those things are gone. You know, I can't do it. I can ride my bike for maybe 20 minutes, and that's pushing it. So, you know, there's a lot of physical loss. You lose a lot of your friends because a lot of people don't believe you. Marriages have broke up because spouses can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. It's sad.
How was it during COVID?
How was what?
How was having this disease during COVID? Because of, you said marriages don't break up and there's a lot of domestic violence.
I'm not really sure if I can speak on that.
Okay.
I mean, for me, there was no change. For me, it was actually okay because I'm used to being in my house all the time.
I think that's so true because people with chronic pain are socially isolated.
Right.
And they generally, if you're not getting better, where are you going out? You're going out to the physician or to your team. That's it.
Yeah, you can't attend. There's times I have to tell people at the last minute. I haven't been able to go to some wedding showers or baby showers. You know, you wake up in the morning and you have no idea until you step on that floor how your pain is going to be for the day. And it could take anything. Like I could be having a great morning, you know, my pain's at bay, and then I turn my neck one way, you know, or I do something with my arm, I reach for it, and then I'm done.
Give me in the last 20 seconds that we have a phone number to reach you at and your website.
The website is rsds.org for RSDSA. The information for the walk is on their website.
Okay.
My number is 631-312-7385. And my email is RSDSA Long Island, spelled out, at Gmail.
I want to
Want
thank
information on the walk.
Jim Broach and I want Dr. Durkin and Debbie ONeill for being guests on the Nonprofit Voice today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.